Come on down to Slightly Biased headquarters, folks. We've got your young cores, your old cores, your new cores, your hard cores, your soft cores, your encores. The album by Eminem. Terrible album. Made me hate Monster Energy drinks. Your horror cores, your grime cores, your molten cores, your molten lava cakes from Chili's. Delicious dessert. I'm losing my mind. Today we're talking about young cores. In fact, we're ranking young cores, my top 5 favorite young cores in the NBA, because this has been a hot topic of debate on Twitter lately. I think for several different reasons. One, Summer League is going on, and everybody just gets so excited watching their team, watching their young guys play, right? I'm guilty of it too. Anytime our first round pick hits a 3, we think, oh my God, this is going to be the best player in the history of the fucking franchise. I'm guilty of it myself. Secondly, there's really not that much to talk about, but really I think the third part is so many teams across the NBA have great young cores. Like we're really in this rare territory where teams are either competing or have something to really be excited about with their young players. Usually it's not like that. Usually you have 3 or 4 teams that are just, nobody knows what the hell they are doing. That's really not the case anymore. Ever since the Wizards decided to blow it all up, even they have something to be excited about, right? So we're just kind of in this rarefied air as far as, NBA and in the direction of teams go. And I think that's why a lot of people are excited about their young core. So today, we're going to rank them. And this will be a little bit controversial more than likely. My definition of a young core, I usually like to go 24 years or younger just because 24 is still the age where a player is 3 or 4 years away from their prime. You still have a lot to look forward to. And if the player hasn't really figured stuff out yet, you could still talk yourself into that player becoming something down the road, right? It gets older than that, 25, 26, you kind of are who you are at that point. Also, I have an agenda to push in this video, and 24 was the cutoff for me to be able to push this agenda. So every player I talk about here at the oldest will be 24 years old on opening night next season, okay? Anybody like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander just turned 25 yesterday. He's off the list. Me and him share a birthday. Cancer brothers. What up, Shay? And I'll just say this right off the bat. Some honorable mentions. The Spurs are not in my top 5. That shocked me, but they're just not. The Rockets are not in my top 5. The Pistons are not in my top 5. Let me explain why. Okay, young cores, they typically do get overhyped, especially by that team's fan base. And that's completely understandable. I get it. The thing for me is, I'd much rather have the one solidified young star that I already know is a star and I can already project being the face of my franchise over the next 10 years than have 3 or 4 guys that I'm hoping become something down the line, or I'm hoping these guys figure it out, all of these dart throws, because a lot of times those guys do not figure it out. Those guys do not, it does not pan out for those guys. I know that it's exciting, and I know you like to talk yourself in, but the reality is some of these young cores with a lot of dart throws, like the Houston Rockets, there's a solid chance it does not pan out for them. That's just the harsh reality. And by the time it does start to pan out for certain guys, some guys are going to be on new teams. Some guys are going to be free agents. Like, I would rather have the solidified young guys on my team. Like the Timberwolves were an honorable mention, and I had them ranked ahead of the Rockets just because I'd rather have Anthony Edwards. Like, I'd rather just go into the season with Anthony Edwards and Jaden McDaniels and figure it out, the other pieces from there, than have like the dart throws like, well, maybe if Jalen Green does this, maybe if Jabari Smith does this. Does that make sense? Sorry, Rockets fans. You guys are the reason I'm making this video, though, because I kept seeing on Twitter, the Rockets have the best young core. No. No. Let's get into it. Number 5, immediately, I'm following my own rules here. I'm going with the Cleveland Cavaliers. They only have 3 guys that I wrote down, Evan Mobley, Darius Garland, and Isaac Okoro, but you have 2 really great young players in Mobley and Garland that I can project being, cornerstone staples of my franchise over the next decade or so. Evan Mobley, 99th percentile in defensive LeBron last year. Opponents shot 6 percentage points worse at the rim when guarded by him. 3rd in Defensive Player of the Year voting with 8 first-place votes. How about that? First team all-defense as well. His offense didn't come along how I would have liked it to, especially as a huge Evan Mobley believer like I am, but the defense is absolutely game-changing. Like, he's going to be in Defensive Player of the Year talks every year. He's probably going to win some Defensive Player of the Years. Like, he is the centerpiece of a team's defense, and a defense that was very, very, very good last year in the Cleveland Cavaliers. So I love that for a young guy. Darius Garland, already an all-star. One-time all-star, 21 points per game over the last 2 seasons, 41% from 3 this past season, 8.5 assists per game 2 years ago when he was the lead ball handler. He is a dynamic playmaker, a dynamic offensive player who can get to the paint at will, a great passer, a good shooter, can create shots for himself, create shots for others, and is very good playing off ball next to Donovan Mitchell. Just a great offensive piece to have, and a great, somebody you can build your team around, right? So if Donovan Mitchell leaves in a couple years in free agency, you're feeling pretty good about yourself because you still have Darius Garland, and then you have Isaac Okoro, who Has a long ways to go, but defensively, he's solid. 98th percentile in matchup difficulty, 92nd in versatility, one of the best perimeter defenders in the league, and a three-point shot that is hit or miss, but when he's on, he's a really strong player. I don't know really what his future is, but just Mobley and Garland by themselves, that's a top 5 duo, a top 5 young duo for me easily. I'd much rather have that than some of these other teams. And now we get to number 4. A team people don't think of when they think of young cores. Never ever thought of. But let me tell you right now, if you sit down and you look at it and you use my metric, 24 years or younger heading into the season, the Dallas Mavericks have to be on this list. They have to. They'd be top 5 if it was Luka Doncic by himself. He is head and shoulders, tiers above anybody else who qualifies for this. 4 first-team All-NBA selections in 5 seasons. Every season beside his rookie year, he has been selected as a top 5 player in the league. 32.5 points per game in the playoffs. That's the second highest point per game total all time behind Michael Jordan. 4th, 6th, 5th, and 8th in MVP voting over the last 4 years, respectively. 32, 8, and 8 last year. 29.5, 8, and 8 over the last 4 seasons. This guy is a top 4 player in the NBA right now. This guy projects to be maybe the best player in the NBA 3-4 years from now. He's probably the second best offensive player in the NBA behind Nikola Jokic. And sure, the season was terrible for the Mavericks. Their offense was still dynamic. They were still an absolute force in the half court. And that's because this guy, Luka Doncic, is probably the second best offensive engine in the league behind Nikola Jokic. He's an absolute force. He's 24 years old, not turning 25 until next February or January. I don't remember when his birthday is. Either way, this guy alone is a top 5 young core. And then you factor in all the other guys. Derek Lively, who the Mavericks just selected 12th overall, 7'1", 7'7" wingspan, going to be an absolute monster defensively, going to clog up the paint, protect the rim, great hands, going to finish a lot of lobs, good rebounder, some upside in his offensive game, but it's going to have to get there. But I like what he's shown so far in Summer League. Same with Omax Prosper. Defensive freak, all over the court, great length, good athleticism, good size, incredibly strong, some interesting abilities when it comes to putting the ball on the floor. A lot of upside there. And then you have Josh Green, who's going to be entering year 4 this upcoming season. 64% true shooting last year. Strong on-ball defender, very athletic, likes to get out and run. That's a rarity on this Mavericks team, but he's one of the few guys who can do it. And he's got really good on-ball capabilities, offensively, attacking the rim, passing. He's got some stuff he needs to work on, but he projects as a bare minimum, a really, really strong role guy on a good team moving forward. And you have Jaden Hardy, second year in the league coming up, 15 points per game on 23 minutes per game in March last year, 60% true shooting as a second-round rookie. You don't really see that often. 50% from 3 in that month on 66 attempts. And Grant Williams applies for this as well. The free agent the Mavericks just picked up. Knockdown corner three-point guy, 61 career playoff games already as a 24-year-old. I talked about this in my Grant Williams video. That's the most in the NBA by a mile, anybody 24 and younger. This is a strong young core, even outside of Luka. Like, obviously, if you take Luka out, no, this core is nowhere near top 5. But you add in a top 4 player in the league who's still 24 years old. Yeah, this is easily a top 5 young core. You're lying to yourself if you don't think so. All right, next up, I do have the Oklahoma City Thunder here at 3. Shai Gilgeous, they would be number 1. Just full stop. They would be number 1 if Shai Gilgeous-Alexander qualified under my rules. But unfortunately, he does not. But still, their young core, even outside of him, is just absolutely amazing. They just drafted Cason Wallace, 10th overall. A great defensive guard, one of the best defensive prospects in this previous draft. Ousmane Dieng, who they drafted 2 years ago, you know, he's still young, barely played last year, spent a lot of time in the G League, but he just turned 20, 6'10", with a 7-foot wingspan, and a lot of interesting offensive upside for him. A guy who can dribble, a guy who can create his own shot. 22 points on 11 shots in his last Summer League game. I'm going to bring up some Summer League games here and there. I just want to say, though, I don't put too much stock into it. I'm just looking at process. Do guys look good? Do I like the way guys, are handling themselves? That's what I really look forward in Summer League. Josh Giddey, of course, 16.6 points per game last year. One of, the most improved players in the league last year, even though he didn't get the award. 3-point percentage went up to 32%. And he dropped 31 points in a play-in win over the New Orleans Pelicans. 31 points. It was a really, really great performance in a must-win, winner-go-home playoff game, pretty much. So you'd love to see that from a second-year guy. Then, of course, Chet Holmgren, drafted 3rd overall last year, didn't play a single minute, has absolutely dominated in Summer League, 16.5 points per game, 10 rebounds, 3.5 blocks. This guy This guy's a solid bet for Rookie of the Year. I'm just assuming like maybe Chet struggles a little tiny bit here or there, or maybe, you know, he tweaks an ankle and they just want to be as cautious as possible with him, although the Thunder will probably be super cautious with Chet. But this guy's going to be a freak, and this Thunder team, you add him into this mix, they're going to be good. They're going to be good. Poku, 21 years old. Isn't that crazy? I feel like that guy's been in the league for 7 fucking years. How was he in the league at 14? How is he 21 years old? Then you have Jalen Williams, J. Will, led the league in charges as a rookie. How about that? Interesting guy in the modern NBA, right? Big with some size, can shoot the 3 ball. I worry about him defensively, but an interesting player nonetheless. Jalen Williams, J. Dub, second in Rookie of the Year voting. Would have got my vote if I had one. Just being honest with you, 14 points per game on 35% from 3. Dominated in his one summer league game this year. He's legit. He's as legit as they come. Let's not forget about Lou Dort. The Dortcher Chamber, 100th percentile in matchup difficulty, 89th percentile in versatility, 99th on-ball defense, 99th off-ball defense, 100th percentile in ball screen defense. One of the best perimeter defenders in the league with, you know, some offensive upside. He's built like a fucking running back. You look at him, there's no way he should be playing basketball, but he is, man. And he's a good player and a part of this young core. This core, even outside of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, is really, really good. And if Shai qualified, like I said, this would be number 1 easily. I do have the Magic over them. It's very close. I love this Magic young core. I see legit major upside in Paolo, like huge upside. 20 points per game last year as a rookie. Obviously, he won Rookie of the Year. That size, man, 20 years old, 6'10", built like a tank. And his ability, you know, the things that he can do with the ball offensively, you know, the ability to create his own shot, break defenses down, you know, his shooting splits and stuff were a little bit rough last year. But yeah, he was a rookie asked to carry an offense. He's got so much upside, so much potential. And really, I think there's an MVP ceiling there for Paolo Banchero. And like, that's just how I feel. And then you have Franz Wagner, one of my favorite players in the entire NBA. Definitely, like, ceiling is perennial all-star, second best player on a really, really good team. I think the floor for him is just like a super, super great role guy, which is already what he is. But that's like the floor. It's just like a really, really, really good player. 87th percentile in shooting talent, 96th in finishing, 81st in playmaking. He's a very versatile offensive player and a really, really strong defender too. 82nd percentile in on-ball defense, 96th off-ball, 91st ball screen. I mean, this guy does it all. Jalen Suggs was really good defensively last year. Offensively, his game needs to get there, right, in order to live up to being the 5th overall pick. But 2 steals per 75 last year, 3.7 deflections. We can live with that. Let's not forget about Wendell Carter Jr. I think one of the most overlooked players in the league. Like, this is the perfect modern center in today's NBA. A guy who can shoot, a guy who can space the floor, a guy who can play make from the center position, and he can do a bunch of stuff defensively. Like, this guy's very underappreciated. His contract is fucking stupid. Like, absolutely stupid. I've seen like... God, Suns fans, God bless you guys. I love you guys. I've seen Suns fans who are like, hey, do you think maybe we could do this? And this mock trade came up quite a bit. It wasn't like it was just one person I saw and I'm singling them out. It was DeAndre Ayton for Wendell Carter Jr. and I think it was Jalen Suggs or some shit like that. It's like, no, that would never work in a million years because Wendell Carter Jr. is just flat out better than DeAndre Ayton. Are you guys aware of that? Then you have Cole Anthony, you know, a microwave scorer. Anthony Black, who they just drafted. I love his game. His shot's going to have to get there, especially to work in this Orlando offense where they do need a little bit more shooting. But I have a lot of faith in him. 17, 5, and 5 with 3 steals in his summer league debut. Showcased a lot of that potential. And he just had a game with 14 rebounds. So he does a lot. Good size. And Jet Howard didn't love the pick, admittedly, but they needed a shooter, and he just had 22 points in his last summer league game, 40% from 3. So maybe he can get there. They're smarter than me. I wouldn't have made the pick. They're smarter than me. They love their Michigan guys. That's really what it boils down to. Number 1, any guesses? Like, you're wondering who's left. I can't believe this team is never mentioned in young core. I never see them mentioned in these young core debates. I never see them number 1, even though they should be, especially if you're excluding Shai Gilgeous-Alexander from the Thunder. It's the Memphis Grizzlies. Like, hello? 51 wins last year, 56 wins 2 years ago. Ja Morant, like, hello? 26 points per game the last 2 seasons, 27 points per game throughout his career in the postseason. I know he's got his off-the-court issues, but when he's on the court, this guy's a perennial MVP candidate, 7th and 12th in MVP voting over the last 2 seasons. And then Jaren Jackson, like, he's still young, just won Defensive Player of the Year, led the league in blocks each of the last 2 seasons. 17 points per game over the last 4 years. And admittedly, like, there's Desmond Bane is 25 years old, so he doesn't qualify for my, you know, my rules. We still have Santi Aldama, who is kind of like a Swiss Army knife, can do a bunch of different things. I like him. I don't know what his ceiling is, but I like him. Zaire Williams, who, let's not forget, they drafted him 10th overall. Very disappointing sophomore season, but he averaged 16.8 minutes per game as a rookie in the 2022 playoffs. So there's still some upside for him. He just needs to tap into it. David Roddy, who they drafted last year, he's an interesting player. Jake Laravia, he's an interesting player. Kenneth Lofton, just a dominant offensive force. Summer League legend, G League legend, preseason legend, garbage time legend. I just wonder if this guy's ever going to get some real minutes. But I don't know how this isn't the best core in the NBA. Like, you have two legit great players, an MVP candidate in John Morant and a perennial defensive player of the year guy in Jaren Jackson Jr. How is that not the best core right there? Desmond Bane's 25, and then you have a bunch of other really solid contributors down the list. So, yeah. Then I decided to do a little thought exercise. All right, let's remove everybody from the 24 and under debate who has made an all-star team, okay? Then what are we looking like? I had the Trailblazers into the list at 5. I love Scoot Henderson. Shaden Sharp's really interesting. Anthony Simons, Nasir Little, don't forget about him. The Rockets do get in there at 4. I like their young core. It's a lot of talent, but it's a lot of question marks. A lot of these guys have huge question marks. Like, who is the guy? Is it going to be Jalen Green? I don't know if we can confidently say that. Amin Thompson's going to have to shoot threes. Cam Whitmore's going to have to pass more than 2 times. Like, there's a lot of question marks for these guys, but they have a ton of potential, though. They really do. The Spurs do come in at number 3, just because I love Devin Vassell. Obviously, I think Wemby's going to be a freak. Outside of that, like Jeremy Sohan I like a lot, but there's some stuff. Like, I need to see a little bit more from some of these guys. And then the Thunder at 2 and the Magic at 1 still. So let me know what you guys think. What's the best young core in the NBA? I think we oftentimes overvalue just having a lot of guys. Like having oh my God, we have 7 players under 22. Okay, well that just means you have 7 players under the age of 22. That doesn't really mean shit. Throughout NBA history, it's never really meant shit. You have to have a guy. And if you don't have a guy, I don't care how many. I'd rather have the 1 A guy than the 7, hey, like maybe these guys can be good players. That's just how I feel about it. Let me know how you guys feel, right? Cavs 5, Mavs 4, Thunder 3. Fuck, I don't even remember my own list. Magic 2, and the Grizzlies 1. I was forgetting my own list. Let me know what you guys think. Okay? Remember this. Always remember this. When life hands you lemons,